Hello and welcome back to a new Beaver Hunter scale models video. Today I want to show you how I created a unique bust base using traditional scale modeling techniques and making the last finishing touches on my bust. So let's go! Okay, I designed and printed this base with my PLA printer, and it included the lettering Bastogne December 1944 and the Screaming Eagles patch. But obviously I couldn't use it like that because of the uneven PLA surface. But in this case this was no problem for me because I wanted to create a monument-like rusty old metal part. And for that I used Tamiya Basic Putty and plastic cement to create an armored texture, just like at the scale model tank. And to make sure that the PLA surface was completely hidden, I made 2 rounds with a putty cement mix. After some sanding, I applied a layer of Mr. Surfacer 1500 to give the surface a slightly smoother finish. To get a dark base, I used black rattle can primer and then started to apply a rust mixture consisting of Tamiya high red and flat yellow. This was the first base coat of several lighter rust mixtures followed by that. And my goal here was to create a rusty base for some chipping effects later, as I wanted to recreate the look of an abandoned tank or a monument tank you can find on former battlefields, for example. My rust mixture was then lightened up with more flat yellow, and I tried to spray an irregular pattern here with my airbrush. And I lighten it up 2 times so that there are at least 3 different rust shades. After the rust layers were completely dry, I applied 2 thin coats of chipping medium by Vallejo. And after these were dry, I could start applying the first paint, here with the white of the Screaming Eagles patch. Of course followed by the black for the patch and the airborne lettering, just like the lettering saying Bastogne December 1944. And then I applied a mix of deep green and khaki to paint this base like an American armored vehicle. Last details were brush painted with flat yellow because I had better control here. And this could be done slightly messy because I'm going to chip the hell out of it in the next step. And as I just said, the next step after the paint was dry was to reactivate it with some water and use a stiff old brush for the chipping. Like I said before, my intention here was to recreate the look of an old or abandoned tank standing on a former battlefield as a monument, for example, and I therefore removed the green paint so the rusty surface can shine through. This was the first time I used Tamiya paints in combination with chipping medium, and it worked much better for me than using, for example, Vallejo or AK acrylic paints, because this was much more controllable. After it was dry, I saved my work with a coat of rattle can matte varnish and applied another 2 rounds of chipping medium. And as my bust is an airborne ranger in Bastogne, I wanted to give it more a winter-like direction with applying a whitewash consisting of flat white over the chipping medium. I was hoping to recreate the look of an American armored vehicle with a winter camo like this. And again, after the white coat was dry, I started chipping after recreating the paint with some water. It's easy to get carried away here and overdo it with the chipping, and I wasn't sure if I wanted it to be more white, green or rusty, and I tried to hit a good spot here. And because I really overdid it at some places, I grabbed me a sponge and applied some white paint again, like you would do a sponge chipping. Like this you can make easy corrections if you get carried away and overdo it with the chipping like I did it here. And as the chipping stage was done now, I made several thin coats of ultra matte varnish to protect the layers and move on. I then used enamel paints to emphasize the rust spots a bit and make them look more crispy. This was done exactly like you would do it on an armored model or anything else rusted, by applying the paint with a brush, let it dry for a few minutes and then use the brush moistened with thinner and blend it into the surrounding. Just in case you missed the first episodes where I prepared and painted my bust using oil paints, you can find all videos on my channel, so don't hesitate to give them a look. I used AK's snow products here for the first time and I was pretty pleased how it came out. I started to make a mixture of snow sprinkles and snow microballoons in almost equal parts, and then added some drops of still water to dilute this mix a bit. And by adding wet effects I hope to give it a glossy wet look. This mix was applied by a brush and placing it on the horizontal surfaces. As snow can accumulate on the smallest protruding surfaces, I also treated the Screamy Eagles patch and the lettering. And I here use pure still water to blend the edges of the snow paste. To create the look of a fresh fallen powdered snow, I sprinkled the snow microballoons on top of the still wet paste. The microballoons get fixed by the wet paste and the excess was knocked off. Obviously the top of the base would be the place where most of the snow would accumulate. But I didn't want to cover all the paintwork I did previously, although I knew this step would be coming. So I tried to get a good balance between a snow-covered surface and letting some paint look through. And here I'm again using still water to blend the edges of the snow accumulations. And again sprinkled some microballoons on top of the wet paste and knocked off the excess. And I think it's not that bad. As a snow-covered metal surface would look some kind of wet or moist, I used wet effects and brushed it on the not snow-covered surface to give it a glossy look. And with this step done, I could put the base aside and take care of the finishing touches on the bust. As much as I loved the clean, sharp, crispy look of the painted bust, this is supposed to be a soldier in combat. So I had to add some earth and mud effects, and I made this by applying the Ammo Splashes series. I therefore diluted the enamel paints with thinner, and after unloading the brush on the towel I applied the paint by speckling it onto the bust. And you can totally believe me that it was not a good feeling at all to sprinkle this nice painted bust with earth enamels like this. But this was totally necessary for me because a soldier in combat has to be dirty. Splashes that were too big or where I didn't like the shape, I could remove or get into shape with a thinner moistened brush. With a toothpick I applied very precise the mud effects into the face so I could recreate some mud splatters. And again with a moistened brush I removed or reshaped them if I wasn't happy. And living in the woods would result in getting covered by snow too. So to also apply the bust optically to the base, I applied small amount of my snow mixture with a toothpick and again covered it with microballoons. This too was a step I wasn't really looking forward to because it really made me nervous to know that I would sprinkle this bust with snow paste, and I wasn't sure if it was a heart attack moment or if I would be happy with the result. But sometimes you just have to give it a try and see if you can implement an idea, and thankfully all went well here. As the helmet is a metal surface too, I painted it with diluted wet effects to make it look more wet and moistened. And by stippling undiluted wet effects into the still wet first coat, I tried to bring some variation into the wet surface. Then it was finally time to put everything together, and I could remove the base from my professional painting holder. I filled some wood glue into the pole hole and placed the bust into it. Of course, beforehand I thought about how I wanted to present the bust, and I just had to make slight corrections of the setting. And after I was happy with the final pose, I covered the pole hole with a mixture of the snow paste and some snow balloons. And with these last steps, to me very special project came to a very satisfying end. I must say I'm very happy how my second ever painted bust came out, and I couldn't be happier with the result. And thank you to you for watching this video or the previous episodes of my bust painting series. Please consider subscribing if you like what you saw. I would be very happy if you support me. So maybe until the next time, and thank you again and stay safe.